emphasis on his program than all the other programs on the station. He lived with us in those days. We sort of adopted him. Mrs. Beasley treated him as if he were our own son. I suppose his basic appeal was that he reminded everybody of their kid brother, whether they ever had one or not. After about a year, he started to change. Not all at once, not overnight, but he started, well, he bought a lot of fancy clothes and a flashy convertible. He started hanging around with a lot of shady people in a lot of shady bars. He even began to talk smutty on the air. And strangely enough, the same people who loved him for the hymns and the sermons loved him for this, too. At first, I thought of sitting down with him and having a serious talk. Then I thought I'd let it pass and let him work it out. I thought he was a decent boy underneath it all. But he was sowing his wild oats. It was something he had to get out of his system. But he didn't. Not then, not later. He never got it out of his system. You know, one morning I walked opened the station. I walked through the vestibule. I opened the inner door. The waiting room was in a terrible condition. Disgraceful. The water cooler was tipped over. A bottle was smashed in the opposite corners. If someone had thrown it across the room, cigarette ends were overturned. The sand was spilled on the rug. A large section of the stair carpeting leading to the offices upstairs was burned. I was appalled. I thought someone had broken in. When I started climbing the stairs, halfway up, I found upstairs was in a worse condition. Chairs were smashed. The file cabinet was overturned, the contents all over the floor. I was sick to my stomach at the senseless destruction. Then I opened the door to my office, and he was on the sofa, dead drunk. There was a half-empty bottle of liquor on the floor. My first impulse was to hit him with anything I could lay my hands on. My first impulse was to destroy him, to tear him apart with my bare hands. But I didn't. I just cleaned the place up. I got rid of the woman. I sobered him up. And I kept Mrs. Beasley away from the station until the damage was repaired. I took $50 a week out of his salary till it was all paid for, but I couldn't fire him. Not without telling Mrs. Beasley why, and I couldn't tell her that. Then a colleague of yours happened to be in Worcester one day and heard him and offered him a contract.
Sid Moore?
Yes, I think that's the name. I never saw Herbert again. Oh, I've heard him many times. I don't suppose all of this is of much use to you.
The original sermon would be if you could find that record.
Oh, I'll find the record, Mr. Harris. Why do you suppose we do it, you and I?
Do what?
Well, why do you suppose that I'm going back to Worcester to look for the record? Why do you suppose that you're going on the air Friday night to tell the whole world what a great man he was? Why don't we just stand in front of a microphone and tell the truth about him?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Beasley. Why did you come to see me in the first place?
Because, quite frankly, Mrs. Beasley wanted me to. What's your excuse?
It's a job. The most important job I've ever had.
Your excuse is no better than mine. Well,
Mr. Beasley, I'm sorry.
About what?
Well, when you came in, that silly business on the couch with my secretary, we clown around a lot, and some of it isn't in very good taste, but we don't mean anything by it.
Oh, that's all right.
Jenny, Mr. Beasley's going back to Worcester to try and find a transcription. When he finds it, he'll call you up. You make arrangements to have it piped down, out of Boston if necessary. Well, goodbye, Mr. Beasley.
Goodbye, Mr. Harris. If you ever get up to Worcester, I wish you'd drop in on us. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Beasley.
I'd love to.
Goodbye, miss.
Goodbye. Anything?
Another roll of tape I can't use on anybody's airwaves. Take it off the machine and put it in my top drawer, will you? I want it from my memory book to remind me of what a louse is really like.
Beasley?
No, not Beasley.
Oh, I put the coffee on your tab.
In the immortal words of Eddie Brand, be my guest.
I finished the blood bank tapes. Do you want to hear them?
All right. Let's hear the great man.
I'm speaking to you now from a small town in Germany. The name of it isn't important, even if the army would let me tell it to you. A few hours ago, this town was held by the Germans. Your sons and brothers and your nephews stormed it with their M1 rifles, and that peculiar heroism that distinguishes the American GI in combat. They advanced from gate post to gate post, from ditch to ditch, and wrenched it bodily from the trained killers of Adolf Hitler. It's a pretty beat-up town. Pretty beat up. As I stand here on the main street and look at the rubble on either side, it's any town, in any war. You won't find this one mentioned in the communiques or in any of your history books. But some of you will remember the name of this town forever. Remember it because this is where your boy, your husband, your father was killed. There's nothing left in this small town now except the living and the wounded. The dead have been carried away. And I'm standing at a battalion aid station where those wounded are being cared for. Some of the boys I can see from where I'm standing will live through the night. But some of them will, because of something I'm holding in my hand. It isn't much to look at, my friends. Nothing much at all. Just a bottle with some tubing attached to it. But it's one of the great links between you and your loved ones. A bloodline. Because what I'm holding is a bottle of plasma. I've carried it halfway across the world. From the blood bank in New York, where the blood was taken from the arm of someone who's listening to my voice right now. It's come to the end of its journey. Here on this dusty main street, in this battered German town. And because it has, one of the boys lying here will live through the night. And his family will never have to remember the name of a battered German town forever. Hold that light a little higher. That's all right, son. Hold on. Just hang on, son. You ready with the plasma? Let it go. It's gonna be all right, son. I hope you were listening carefully. I was watching. You couldn't see the sweat standing out on the face of the medic's captain. You couldn't see that blood flowing quietly into the kid's veins, giving him a fighting chance to stay alive. I could see all that. And more. I could see 100 million of us, an ocean away from this battered German town, not being shot at, not lying on our backs on a canvas stretcher suspended between life and death. We all have a lot of extra blood flowing through our veins. Ask your doctor, he'll tell you. We can spare some of it. Just a pint is enough. Enough to keep some other young American boy in some other battered German town alive. For God's sake, think of that tonight.
Wow. Did it work? Did it get blood?
A couple of warehouses full of it. He got a pot full of awards for it, too.
I can see why. Well, it really got him, didn't it?
Oh, hooray for him. Guys are dying right in front of him, and you're impressed because he felt something. 3 cheers for Herb Fuller.
Now, wait a minute, Mike. Stop being a wise guy for a minute. I've been poking around this guy's life for 3 days. For 3 days, I've had the feeling he wasn't a man at all. That he hated people, used them, lied, and cheated.